Sometimes, the world doesn't need a weapon to hurt you, just a stare, a whisper, a headline. Sometimes all it takes is a hoodie and the wrong assumptions that come with it. In a society where appearance speaks louder than words, what happens when a young black teen walks into a bookstore and walks out with a storm waiting at his doorstep? This is not just about race, not just about fear. It's about a system that sees the cloth before the character, and a father who's been fighting that system his entire life, only to watch it close in on his own son. This is the story of Elijah Brooks and the hoodie that dared to be more than just fabric. It was one of those slow, rainy afternoons in Seattle where everything seemed to move in halftime. The kind of day where clouds hung low like swollen secrets and streets shimmered with reflections of wet pavement and blinking neon. In a quiet corner of the Capitol Hill neighborhood, tucked between an artisan coffee shop and a dry cleaner that had seen better days, sat a narrow little bookstore called Morrison's Pages. It was the kind of place you'd miss if you blinked. But once inside, it felt like a world of its own. The scent of old paper and wood polish greeted every customer who stepped through the door. Shelves stretched up like tree trunks, each packed with used and new books. The lighting was soft and amber, the music low and jazzy. It wasn't busy, just a few quiet souls browsing in solitude. Then came Elijah Brooks, 17 years old, a little over 6 feet tall, lean, deliberate in how he moved, the kind of walk that came from growing up being told to never look suspicious. He wore a black hoodie, hood up, white headphones in, sneakers that had seen 2 summers, and a backpack slung low on one shoulder. The hoodie wasn't fashion, it was armor. A cloak of calm he'd grown used to wearing in places that didn't always feel safe, even if they looked safe. He wasn't looking for trouble. Elijah never was. He came for one thing: justice deferred, a dense legal text he'd been trying to track down for his AP Civics paper. That bookstore was the only place in town that still carried it in print. He stepped in, nodded politely to the woman behind the counter, a middle-aged white woman with silver glasses and a cardigan that matched the beige walls. She didn't nod back, just watched him. Elijah noticed, of course, but he kept moving. He walked toward the back, eyes scanning the tall shelves labeled Law, Politics. Jazz played softly in the background. A saxophone meandered lazily over a brush snare. And then it happened. A small girl, maybe 5 or 6, darted out from behind a nearby shelf, laughing, chasing a paper plane someone had tossed. Elijah instinctively swerved to avoid her. At the exact same moment, an elderly woman, white, maybe mid-70s, holding a hardback book, stepped into the aisle from the other direction, their shoulders clipped. Not hard, not aggressive, just one of those accidental, real-world human moments. But she gasped sharply. Startled, she dropped the book. Her other hand clutched her chest like it had been struck. Elijah froze. He yanked out his headphones, stepped forward. "Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am," he said gently. "I didn't see you there." He bent down and picked up the book, a biography of Eleanor Roosevelt, and held it out to her with both hands. She didn't take it, not right away. She was staring at him, at the hoodie, at his skin, at the unspoken symbols she had been taught to fear. She took a step back, hand now on her purse, the way people do when they're not sure if they should run or pretend not to be afraid. Elijah kept his posture calm, controlled. This wasn't his first time navigating someone else's discomfort. She finally took the book from him, muttered something, maybe thank you, maybe just a breath, and turned away. He gave a slight nod and turned back toward the exit. As he walked past the cashier again, he could feel her eyes still on him. The man near the door had stopped reading altogether, watching like a spectator waiting for something worse to happen. No one said a word, but the judgment was deafening. The bell above the door jingled softly as Elijah stepped out into the drizzle. What Elijah didn't know, couldn't have known, was that the bookstore had recently installed a new security system. One of those motion-activated cameras tucked up in the corner ceiling, angled down toward the back aisle. The footage wasn't special, it was grainy, no audio, black and white, but it caught the moment. The second the woman stepped back, the book falling, Elijah reaching toward her reaction. 15 seconds, no sound, no explanation, just visuals. That night, someone clipped it and posted it on social media with a caption that read, "This is why I never let my grandma go out alone anymore." Within hours, it was everywhere. By midnight, the post had 27,000 views and climbing. Facebook moms shared it with furious emojis. Twitter accounts called Elijah a predator in training. The local Reddit thread debated whether he should be expelled from school, all based on a silent video in a hoodie. Back home, Elijah was sitting at his desk, still unaware of the storm brewing around him. His civics textbook was open. He was highlighting a paragraph about the 14th Amendment. His mom stood quietly in the hallway watching him. She had seen the video. One of her co-workers had sent it to her with a, "Just in case this is your son," message. She walked into his room, phone in hand, face pale. "Elijah," she said, voice tight, have you looked online?" He glanced up, confused. "Number Y." She handed him the phone. The moment he saw the thumbnail, himself frozen mid-motion. His throat went dry. He tapped to the video, watched, rewatched, then scrolled through the comments. Is this the same kid who was suspended last year? Bet his dad's locked up. Typical. Hoodie equals hood rat. He didn't say anything, just stared. "That's not what happened," he whispered. His mom placed a hand on his shoulder. "I know," she said, "but they don't want the truth." 3 time zones away, in a suite at the Fairmont in Washington, D.C., Marcus Brooks was rehearsing his keynote speech. It was the opening address for the National Civil Liberties Conference, a speech about racial bias in law enforcement and implicit stereotypes. His phone buzzed on the nightstand, an email from his legal assistant. Subject line, "This just went viral. Please check as soon as possible." Marcus clicked. He watched, and watched again. He knew that walk, that hoodie, that posture, calm under pressure. He knew that boy. That was his son. Marcus sat down slowly on the edge of the bed. The city buzzed outside his window, a blur of lights and noise he couldn't hear. His heart pounded, not from fear, but from a kind of rage that came only when justice touched home. He had spent 25 years defending other people's sons. Now they were coming for his. And this time, it wasn't just professional, it was personal. Before the headlines, before the accusations, before 15 seconds turned into a national narrative, there was Elijah Brooks. And Elijah? He was more than a hoodie. He was born in spring, early May, on a Tuesday morning just before sunrise. His mother said he came into the world quiet. No crying, no fuss. Just eyes wide open, already observing, already aware. From the start, Elijah was a listener, a reader, a thinker. By the time he was 5, He was asking questions most grown folks didn't have the patience to answer. Why do police carry guns if they say they want peace? Why are all the presidents white? Why does Grandpa call Dr. King not finished? At 7, he wrote a letter to the mayor asking why his school didn't have books with kids who look like him. The mayor never wrote back, but his grandfather framed the letter anyway, hung it in the living room right next to a photo of Thurgood Marshall. Elijah's mother, Simone, worked 2 jobs, mornings at a medical billing office, evenings stocking at a pharmacy. She kept the house running, bills paid, clothes clean. She was firm but soft, a woman who could correct you with a look and love you with a plate of sweet potato pie. His grandfather, Harold, was the heartbeat of the house. A retired civil rights organizer, Harold marched in Alabama, organized sit-ins in Chicago, and once stood face-to-face with a police dog in Jackson and didn't flinch. Now in his 70s, he walked slow, talked slow, but remembered everything. Elijah and Harold were inseparable. They'd spend Saturdays at the community library, not the new one, but the older branch with creaky floors and dusty shelves. Elijah called it the temple because that's where he felt most free. He read everything: Baldwin, Du Bois, Ginsberg, Malcolm, Obama. He loved how words could fight, how paragraphs could push back. That's how he learned the law wasn't just rules. It was a language, a battlefield. And he wanted in. By age 15, Elijah had decided he was going to be a civil rights attorney. Not just any lawyer, the kind that made systems tremble, the kind that understood what it meant to live in a world built to doubt you, and still defend it for the people inside. His room had more legal pads than video games. On his wall, a vision board with 3 things. 1, a picture of Howard University. 2, a printed quote, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." 3, and a hoodie, the first one he ever owned, thumbtacked like a relic. He wore hoodies for comfort, for identity, for safety, but also defiantly, because he knew what people thought when they saw a tall black teen in a hoodie. And every day he wore one, he was making a quiet statement. You don't get to decide who I am. At school, Elijah kept a low profile, straight A's, never late, volunteered on weekends. He wasn't loud in class, but when he spoke, people listened. Teachers called him mature beyond his years. Some students called him too serious. A few just called him weird. He didn't mind. He wasn't there to impress. He had a mission. Then there was his father, Marcus Brooks. To the world, Marcus was a lion of the courtroom. Sharp suits, sharper arguments. A man who had gone toe-to-toe with police unions, won high-profile discrimination cases, and was frequently quoted on MSNBC and NPR. He had power, visibility, and a voice that could dismantle legislation like scaffolding. But to Elijah, Marcus was complicated. He wasn't absent, just distant, always traveling, always in demand. The kind of dad who missed birthdays, but sent gifts with notes like, "I'm proud of you. Keep your head up." He gave Elijah lectures instead of hugs, expectations instead of encouragement. Elijah respected him, but he didn't feel seen. There was always a space between them, a silence filled with pressure. "You come from warriors," Marcus once said. "You don't get to be average." And maybe that's why Elijah tried so hard to stay perfect, to avoid trouble, to stay out of the news, to earn the scholarship, to prove he wasn't just a hoodie, to prove he was worth his last name. So when that video surfaced, when his name became trending for all the wrong reasons, It wasn't just about public shame. It was personal, because Elijah had done everything right, and still they didn't see him. Still they chose fear over facts. Still he became a symbol, not of achievement, not of ambition, but of danger. His school, once so proud of his achievements, issued a statement that felt more like a disclaimer than a defense. Something about zero tolerance for aggressive behavior. Something about thorough review process. A few teachers pulled him aside and said, "We know you'd never do something like that." But they didn't say it in front of others. Some classmates started avoiding him, whispering. One kid asked if his dad was going to sue the school, like he does everyone else. Even the neighbors were acting different. A woman Elijah had helped carry groceries once crossed the street when he walked by. And all of it, over 15 seconds. 15 seconds where the world didn't ask who he was, only what he looked like. He wanted to talk to his dad, but he didn't know how. What would he say? "I didn't do anything, Dad. They're lying. This isn't who I am." But he knew Marcus wouldn't settle for tears or confusion. He'd want a plan, a defense, a battle strategy. And Elijah wasn't ready to fight. Not yet. He wasn't scared. He was just tired. That night he sat with his grandfather on the front porch. Neither of them said much. The rain had stopped, but the air was still thick. In the distance, thunder rumbled faintly, like a warning from a storm that hadn't fully passed. Harold sipped his tea. Then after a long pause, he said, "You remember what I told you about moments?" Elijah nodded. "They don't define you," Harold continued, "but they do reveal you. This question mark, this ain't the end of your story, but it might be the start of a new chapter." Elijah didn't answer, but he looked out into the dark street, hoodie still on, heart still heavy. And somewhere deep down, something in him began to shift. Before they called him a threat, before the silence of his school, the whispers of his town, Elijah Brooks was already fighting a battle, quietly, constantly. And now the world was about to learn who he really was. Elijah didn't sleep that night, not because of fear, because of noise. Not outside, but in. The noise of comments echoing in his head. The noise of silence from people who knew better, but said nothing. And the loudest noise of all, the question looping over and over in his mind. How did 15 seconds erase 17 years? By morning, the world had only grown louder. The video had now reached 2.1 million views across platforms. Local news ran with it. Incident at Capitol Hill bookstore raises concerns about youth violence. They blurred Elijah's face, but everyone in town already knew. His classmates, his teachers, the parents in the PTA groups. Even the Starbucks barista downtown gave him a strange look when he walked in for his usual black coffee. The school called at 10:42 a.m. Simone answered. Elijah sat nearby, watching her face shift. "He hasn't done anything wrong," she said firmly. "This video doesn't show what really happened." "Are you seriously suggesting disciplinary action?" A pause, her jaw clenched. "We'll be there tomorrow." She hung up. "They want a meeting," she told Elijah, "with the principal, a disciplinary review committee. They say they've received multiple complaints from parents." Elijah didn't say anything. He didn't need to, because in America even silence has a race, and his was guilty until proven invisible. By noon, a petition had been launched by a neighborhood watchdog group calling itself Safe Streets, Safe Students. The title of the petition: "Remove aggressive student from Central Hill Academy immediately." It didn't name him, but it didn't have to. It referenced the boy in the hoodie from the video. It claimed he endangered a senior citizen. It said his presence undermines trust in our schools. Within hours, the petition had over 4,000 signatures. A few of the comments were from parents Elijah knew, parents he'd helped carry groceries for, babysat their kids, smiled at in carpool lanes. One wrote, "This kind of behavior can't go unchecked. Just look at him. It's always the hoodie kids." Another, "I don't care how good his grades are." He made her feel unsafe. Her, the woman in the bookstore. She hadn't spoken publicly, but her silence had been filled by everyone else's assumptions. No statement, no clarification. And for most, that was enough. Because when you're Black in America, silence is never protection. It's prosecution. And then, like clockwork, the police showed up. Not at their home, not yet, but at the school. Two uniformed officers arrived during lunch hour, speaking with administrators behind closed doors. Students started whispering, "They're here for Elijah." Someone said he threatened the lady. "Isn't his dad like some big shot lawyer?" Someone filmed a clip of Elijah walking quietly down the hallway while students parted like waves. That clip hit TikTok with the caption, "The bookstore bully, Central High's very own villain." Simone was livid. She called the school, demanded answers, demanded transparency. She got automated responses, apologies wrapped in red tape, pending investigation. No further comment. Elijah felt himself disappearing, not because he was hiding, but because no one wanted to see him as human anymore. He wasn't Elijah Brooks, aspiring attorney, debate team captain, community tutor. He was the hoodie, the bump, the headline. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., Marcus was pacing in a hotel hallway. He hadn't left the conference. Not yet. But he hadn't attended a single panel since the video dropped. His phone buzzed nonstop. Colleagues, journalists, activists reaching out. Some asked if the video was really his son. Some offered help. Some said nothing at all. But Marcus didn't need more calls. He needed action. He called the school, got put on hold. He called the bookstore. No answer. He called Elijah's principal and was told that because of the ongoing situation, they couldn't discuss matters without legal counsel. "I am legal counsel," Marcus snapped, but they still stonewalled him. That night, he sat in the dark of his hotel room, scrolling endlessly, and then he saw it. A new article. Headline, "Prominent civil rights lawyer's son under fire in viral incident." His name was in the first paragraph. Elijah's name was in the second. And just like that, his son's future was no longer private. It was political. Back in Seattle, Elijah sat at the dining table, laptop open, blank Google Doc in front of him. It was supposed to be his personal statement for a scholarship to Howard. But what could he write? "I believe in justice, while the world treated him like a threat. I've always tried to be a leader, while his school wouldn't stand up for him." He closed the laptop. Harold walked in, saw the look in his eyes, and said nothing. Instead, he handed Elijah a small worn book. "Letters from a Birmingham jail." "Read it again," Harold said. This time, not for school, for survival. Then came the call from the school. Again, this time, more formal. "Due to the escalation of public attention and safety concerns, Elijah Brooks is placed on temporary suspension pending full review." Suspended, without a hearing, without testimony, without truth. Elijah stood in the kitchen as Simone slammed the phone down and let out a cry that was equal parts fury and heartbreak. "They want to bury you," she said, voice shaking, "and I'm not letting them." She grabbed her phone, opened her contacts, and called Marcus. Across the country, Marcus picked up on the first ring. Simone didn't waste time. They suspended him. No due process, no evidence, just a video. "I'm done waiting, Marcus. You come back. Now." A long pause, and then Marcus said just 4 words. "I'm on my way." He booked the next flight to Seattle, canceled the conference, deleted his speech draft, and packed nothing but a laptop, a folder full of case law, and a gray hoodie. The next chapter was no longer about defending the public. It was about defending his own blood. A petition, a suspension, a silent crowd too afraid to ask for the truth. In 15 seconds, Elijah lost his name. In 48 hours, he gained a target on his back. But what they didn't know was that his father was on his way, and the fight was just beginning. 2 days after the video went viral, Elijah Brooks was no longer just a student. He was a symbol, a cautionary tale, a trending name in an ugly debate about safety, race, and what people think when they see a hoodie walk through the door. And the conversation was no longer confined to social media. Now it had found its way into conference rooms, school board meetings, even the evening news. It began with the petition, launched by a local community watch group, mostly anonymous members. The document called for Elijah's immediate removal from Central Hill Academy. They claimed he posed a threat to public safety, that his presence made students and faculty feel unsafe, and that previous behavior suggested a pattern of aggression. There was no previous behavior, but no one seemed interested in that detail. Within 48 hours, the petition had 9,000 signatures. Local parents shared it. So did business owners. Even a retired police chief chimed in on a radio show. "Look, I'm not saying he's guilty, but where there's smoke..." The words hung in the air, heavy, suggestive, dangerous. Then came the email blast from the Central Hill Parents Association. "In light of recent events, we encourage all families to speak with their children about safety on campus. Administration is actively addressing concerns regarding recent behavioral incidents." No names, but everyone knew. At lunch, Elijah sat alone, not by choice, but by gravity. The same students who used to ask for homework help now avoided eye contact. Even teachers seemed hesitant. A few offered quiet glances of support. But no one spoke up, not publicly, because public meant risk. That Friday morning, Simone received a letter, certified, stamped. It came from the city's Juvenile Review Board. Inside was a notice of investigation. Not a charge, not yet, but a request for Elijah to attend a formal interview with city legal officials about the bookstore incident. A complaint had been filed, not by the woman involved, but by someone who'd seen the video and felt it represented a clear intent to intimidate. Intent, filed by someone who had never been in the room, never seen the moment, never heard Elijah speak. Simone stared at the letter for a full minute before calling Elijah into the kitchen. "They want you downtown," she said. "For what?" "To ask you questions about the video." Elijah didn't answer. He just sat down, quiet. Simone placed a hand on his shoulder. "They think they know who you are," she said. "Now you have to decide if you'll let them write your story or if you're gonna write it yourself." Meanwhile, the media frenzy only intensified. 2 local news anchors debated Elijah's case on air. One called it a clear example of overreaction and racial bias. The other warned that we must take community fear seriously. Fear. Again. The word kept showing up. Not truth, not context, not even facts. Just fear. At the school board, pressure was building. The superintendent received over 300 emails from concerned parents, many citing the safety of our children and threatening to pull funding or transfer their kids. In response, the board convened a private emergency session. There was no trial, no evidence presented, just discussion, whispers, strategy, and then a decision. Elijah Brooks would be placed on administrative leave until further notice, effective immediately. They sent the letter via email. Simone read it 3 times. It didn't mention what Elijah was accused of. It didn't cite any violation, just ongoing investigation and a safe learning environment for all. Elijah didn't cry. He didn't punch a wall or scream into a pillow. He just folded the letter in half, placed it on the table, and went to his room. Outside, a reporter stood across the street, snapping pictures of the house. Inside, Simone stood in the hallway, arms crossed, lips trembling, fury blooming in her chest like wildfire. On Monday morning, Elijah didn't get up for school. He stayed in bed, hood pulled tight, phone face down, the silence in the room louder than any accusation. Across the city, parents called into radio shows. One said, "I know that kid's dad is some big lawyer, but that's the problem. These people always use power to dodge responsibility." Another caller, "Maybe this is finally the wake-up call he needs." And still, the woman from the bookstore hadn't said a word, not a statement, not a denial, not a single correction. Her silence became a canvas for other people's fears. And in that silence, Elijah's identity was rewritten by strangers, again and again. At the Juvenile Review Board office, Elijah sat beside Simone in a waiting room lined with posters about teen truancy and substance abuse. A clerk walked by with a clipboard, glanced at him, and looked again. The glance lingered. Elijah shifted in his seat. Simone squeezed his hand. "You know who you are," she said. "That's more than they'll ever know." They didn't charge him. They couldn't. No victim statement, no police report, no physical contact. But the fact that he had to sit through it, that he had to explain what didn't happen to people who didn't care, left a bruise deeper than any sentence could. That night, Elijah sat on the porch with his grandfather, Harold. The old man didn't say much, just handed Elijah a warm mug of tea and nodded toward the street. "You feel that?" he asked. "What?" "That pressure, that silence, that itch under your skin." Elijah nodded. "It's how you know they're watching, waiting for you to stumble." "What if I do?" Elijah asked. Harold looked him in the eyes. "Then you get up, you stumble louder." And just like that, the silence in Elijah's mind shifted. Not gone, but reshaped. No longer shame. Now, fire. It started with a glance, then a headline, then a petition, then a legal notice. And just like that, Elijah Brooks was standing in the storm of a system that never needed facts to pull the trigger. The world was watching, and the boy in the hoodie was not backing down. 3 days passed. 3 days of silence from the school. 3 days of Elijah not stepping foot outside. 3 days of Simone making phone calls, writing emails, pacing the house like a soldier waiting for orders. And then, at exactly 7:41 p.m. on a Wednesday, Marcus Brooks called. Simone answered on the first ring. "They've gone too far," he said. She didn't respond. She didn't need to. "I'm on the next flight out. Don't say anything to the school. Don't respond to the press. I'll handle it." "What changed?" Simone asked quietly. Marcus paused. "Someone sent me a copy of the city complaint and a copy of the school board's internal emails." Another pause. They think they can silence him. They forgot who he belongs to. The next morning, Seattle was gray, like always. But this time, the clouds weren't just weather. They were warning. Marcus landed just before 9 a.m. He didn't bring a team, didn't call in favors, didn't even carry a briefcase. He walked off that plane wearing a simple gray hoodie, dark jeans, and black boots. And when reporters spotted him at baggage claim, they started snapping photos like they'd seen a ghost or a general returning to the battlefield. By 10:30 a.m., Marcus was at the front door. Elijah opened it. They looked at each other, man to man, not father to son. Elijah's hoodie was black. Marcus's was gray. But in that moment, they wore the same armor. "You ready?" Marcus asked. Elijah didn't speak. He just nodded. Marcus spent the next few hours building a case, not just a legal one, a moral one. He reviewed the footage, every second. He timed the reaction. He analyzed the media coverage. He printed out the school board emails Simone had forwarded, each one more incriminating than the last. One line stood out: "We cannot appear soft on this issue. Public opinion is against him. Recommend removal, regardless of outcome." It wasn't justice, it was politics, and Marcus had fought politicians before. By 2 p.m., Marcus called the superintendent's office and requested a meeting with the disciplinary committee. Immediately, in person. "I'm not making a request," he said. "I'm exercising my legal right to be heard before you continue damaging my son's future." The voice on the other end stammered. "Sir, we're not prepared." "You've had 4 days to prepare," Marcus cut in. "I'll be there at 4 o'clock. You have until then." Click. Simone looked at him as he hung up. "You're really going to war." "I've been at war," Marcus replied. "This time it's personal." Elijah sat on the couch watching his father pace. "You don't have to do this for me," he said. Marcus stopped. "I'm not doing this for you," he said. A pause. "I'm doing this with you." At 3:57 p.m., the Brooks family walked into Central Hill Academy. No press, no crowd, just eyes, watching from behind classroom windows, office blinds, and the corners of quiet hallways. Marcus led the way. Simone followed. Elijah walked behind them, his footsteps slow, deliberate. No one said a word. The hearing took place in a conference room just off the main office. Present were the principal, vice principal, 3 board members, and the school district's legal counsel. A woman in a dark blue suit who didn't look up when Marcus entered. Marcus sat down across from them, placed a folder on the table, and didn't smile. "Let's begin." The principal cleared his throat. "Mr. Brooks, thank you for coming. As you know, we—" "Let me stop you right there," Marcus said. "Before you read from your prepared remarks, let's be very clear about what this is." He opened the folder and pulled out a printed email, the one with the line about public opinion. "You've already decided who my son is. This meeting isn't about fact. It's about fear." He slid the email across the table. "This is proof of administrative bias. This is a school district deciding that optics matter more than a child's future." The legal counsel leaned forward. "With respect, Mr. Brooks, the community has raised valid concerns." "No," Marcus said, voice rising slightly. "The mob has raised noise, and you listened. You forgot your job wasn't to protect yourselves. It was to protect truth." He pointed to Elijah. "This young man is a straight-A student. No record, no history of violence. A leader, a thinker. You had one viral clip, no audio, no context, and you let public panic drive your decisions." The board members shifted in their seats. I'm not here asking for favors, Marcus continued. I'm demanding accountability. Then he pulled out a flash drive. On this drive is a full legal brief. If my son is not fully reinstated by end of day, I will file suit for unlawful suspension, defamation, and educational negligence. He looked each person in the eye. You've allowed racial bias to influence school policy. You've let a teenager be tried in the court of public opinion. But I promise you, this won't end in whispers. It will end in headlines, and you know how that plays. Silence, no one dared speak. Then Elijah leaned forward, his voice steady. I don't want revenge. I just want to be seen. Not as a threat, not as a mistake, just seen. For a moment, no one moved, and then the principal quietly said, We'll reverse the suspension, effective immediately. Outside, the sun had finally cracked through the gray. Elijah stepped onto the steps of the school, hood down, back straight. Simone smiled, tears in her eyes. Marcus placed a hand on his son's shoulder. Not heavy, not leading, just there, present. And in that moment, the battle shifted. Not just for Elijah, but for every kid who'd ever worn a hoodie and been told it made them dangerous. In a room built to break him, Elijah stood taller than ever. And beside him, not in front, not behind, was a father who knew the system and chose to fight it, not excuse it. The war wasn't over, but for the first time Elijah knew he wasn't fighting alone. The meeting room at Central Hill Academy had gone still. On one side of the table sat the school board, stiff-backed, eyes guarded. On the other sat Marcus Brooks, calm but sharp, the folder of damning emails spread out like a quiet declaration of war. And next to him, Elijah. Hood up, hands folded, gaze steady. It should have ended quickly, but power never concedes easily, even when it's wrong. The principal adjusted his tie, cleared his throat, and spoke carefully. Mr. Brooks, while we understand your concerns, we have to consider the bigger picture here. What bigger picture? Marcus interrupted, voice low. The one where a child's future is expendable for your public image? We're trying to protect the reputation of the school. At the cost of your integrity. The room tensed. One board member leaned forward. Look, no one is accusing your son of a crime. You suspended him. You allowed a petition to circulate unchecked. You invited police into his school without notifying his mother. You may not have accused him, but you punished him like he was guilty. No one responded, because the words were true. And truth, spoken plainly, has a way of silencing even the most prepared. But then, just when Marcus was about to press harder, something unexpected happened. His phone buzzed, then Simone's, then Elijah's. A message from Maya, one of Elijah's classmates. Check the live stream. Now they opened the link. A video was being broadcast on Instagram Live, already nearing 10,000 viewers. A student, Darius Fields, junior year, film club member, had gone live from his phone while sneaking his way outside the school admin building. The caption read, Behind these doors, they're deciding Elijah's future. And we're watching. The video didn't show faces inside the meeting, but it caught audio. Clear, crisp, unfiltered. The world was listening. Soon others started joining the feed. Students commenting, parents tuning in, community leaders screen recording and resharing. People were hearing the conversation, the tone, the hesitation, the defensiveness of the school, the clarity of Marcus, the quiet strength of Elijah. It spread fast. In less than 15 minutes, Let Elijah Speak was trending on Twitter in Washington state. In 30 minutes, it hit regional news. Back in the room, the principal's assistant slipped him a note. He read it, paled slightly, then turned to the others. "There's outside interest in this hearing." "Outside interest?" Marcus asked, already knowing. "It seems some students have gone live." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Transparency. You should try it more often." Then, another knock at the door. Everyone turned. The door opened, and in stepped someone no one expected to see. She was small, frail, dressed in a conservative brown coat. Her hair was curled carefully, makeup modest, but her hands were trembling, and her eyes, tired but focused, scanned the room until they found Elijah, the woman from the bookstore. The room froze. The vice principal stood up. "I'm sorry, ma'am, this is a closed session." "Let her speak," Marcus said. She nodded gratefully and walked to the front of the room. "My name is Eleanor Hastings. I'm the woman from the bookstore." All eyes on her. "What happened that day was a misunderstanding. I was startled. I reacted poorly. But never, not for 1 second, did I feel threatened. That boy, he apologized. He helped me. He was kind." She looked at Elijah now. "I was raised to be cautious. But somewhere along the way, caution turned into something else. Something that hurt you. And I'm sorry." She turned to the board. "The story that went around wasn't mine. I never filed a report. I never made a complaint. The narrative ran away from the truth. And that's not on him. That's on all of us." Silence. Then someone from the board finally asked, "Would you be willing to share this with the public?" She pulled out a folded sheet of paper. "I already have." She handed it to Marcus. A printed statement already emailed to 3 news outlets. Within the hour, local media picked it up. "Bookstore witness breaks silence. He helped me." Within 3 hours, the clip of her statement was clipped, subtitled, and shared across multiple platforms. By sunset, a new headline replaced the old. "From Villain to Victim, The Truth About Elijah Brooks." And just like that, the story shifted. That night, the school board issued a formal apology. Not a half-hearted statement, a real one. "We sincerely apologize to Elijah Brooks and his family for our premature judgment and lack of due process. We will conduct an internal review of our protocols and implement bias training for all faculty and staff." The police department quietly withdrew interest in any follow-up inquiry. The city's juvenile review board dismissed the inquiry entirely, and the petition that had once demanded Elijah's expulsion? Gone. Elijah didn't celebrate. There were no fireworks, no fist pumps, just a quiet exhale, as if for the first time in days he could breathe deeply, without feeling like the air was borrowed. He sat in his room that night, hoodie still on, scrolling through the comments, and for once they weren't filled with venom. "Elijah, I'm sorry, I judged too fast. You handled this with more dignity than most adults I know. Keep your head up, King." Marcus knocked softly on the door and stepped in. "You okay?" Elijah nodded. "They listened." Marcus sat on the edge of the bed. "They saw you. Finally." "No," Elijah said. "They saw the truth. I've been here the whole time. The fight wasn't fair. The system didn't yield willingly. But in the end, the truth found a mic, and the world had no choice but to listen. For Elijah Brooks, resolution didn't come as rescue. It came as recognition, long overdue but real. It wasn't the apology that changed Elijah, or the retraction, or even the headlines finally getting the story right. It was something smaller, quieter. It was the walk through the school hallway the morning after the news broke. No more whispers, no more stares, just space, and in that space, silence. Not the tense kind, Not the suspicious kind, but the kind that comes when people don't know what to say because they've finally seen you. It didn't feel like a victory. It felt like survival. And that, Elijah realized, was the difference between people who got justice and people who had to earn it. One was returned to normal. The other would never be the same. That afternoon, he sat in Mr. Gordon's government class. The same room where just a week ago, someone had slipped a drawing onto his desk that read, "Watch out, he might snap." Today, no one passed him anything. No jokes, no jabs, just notes, paper, lessons. And then Mr. Gordon said something that made the room pause. The Constitution guarantees due process, but it doesn't guarantee public opinion. That's where we, the people, come in. His eyes landed on Elijah for half a second, not in pity, not in praise, just acknowledgement. During lunch, Elijah walked past the cafeteria tables, plate in hand. Several students nodded at him. One offered him a spot at their table. Another smiled sheepishly and muttered, "I should have said something." "I'm sorry." He nodded. "Thanks." He didn't say more, not because he wasn't grateful, but because he didn't want their guilt to become his burden. Later that week, the school counselor approached him in the hallway. "Elijah, we're planning a student-led forum next month about race, perception, and restorative justice. Would you be willing to help lead it?" Elijah hesitated. "I'm not sure I'm the right person." "You're exactly the right person," she said gently, "because you lived it." He thought about that. Not just that day, the incident, but everything after. The headlines, the silence, the online hate, the look in his mom's eyes when she got that email from the school. His dad flying across the country in a hoodie in a fury. His grandfather on the porch, sipping tea and watching history repeat itself through a boy he loved more than breath. He didn't ask for this story, but maybe it was his to carry. That night, he sat in his room and opened his laptop. He started typing. Not a statement, not a press release, just thoughts, real ones. "I always thought being good was enough, that if I got the grades, stayed quiet, never got into trouble, I'd be safe. But being good didn't save me. Because the truth is, being good doesn't change the rules of the game. It just delays the moment you realize you were never the one making them." He stopped, deleted the last line, started over. "My name is Elijah Brooks. I'm a student, a son, a grandson, and I wear a hoodie. Not because I'm hiding, but because I'm claiming space." The words kept coming, about how perception is a prison, about how fear becomes policy, about how silence from people who know better hurts more than ignorance. He wasn't sure if it was a speech or a letter. He just knew it was honest. And that was enough for now. 2 days later, he stood on the same stage where, just months before, he had been awarded a regional academic achievement medal. This time, no trophy, no script, just him and the microphone in a room full of people finally ready to listen. "There's a difference between being heard and being understood," he began. "Last week I was trending. People called me names, said I was dangerous, that I looked like trouble. But they didn't know my name. They didn't know my story. They didn't ask." He paused. "I'm not here to shame anyone. I'm not angry. Not anymore. But I am awake. And I need you to be too. I need you to understand that when you cross the street because you see a hoodie, when you choose not to sit next to someone because of how they look, when you assume danger instead of curiosity, you're not protecting yourself. You're repeating a pattern. A pattern that has cost people like me opportunities, friendships, peace, and sometimes our lives. The room was silent. He didn't need applause. He needed them to feel uncomfortable, because truth should be uncomfortable before it can be transformative. He looked out at the crowd. I wear this hoodie every day, not as a protest, but as a promise to never shrink myself so someone else can feel safe in their assumptions. And if you remember anything from this story, let it be this. It's not the hoodie that threatens you, it's the fear you carry inside it. The crowd didn't cheer, they stood, and that meant more. Afterward, Maya found him backstage. She hugged him tight. You changed how people see us, she said. Elijah shook his head. I just reminded them we're here. Back at home, he found Harold waiting on the porch. Same chair, same tea, same gaze. Saw the live stream, Harold said. You got the voice now. Elijah sat down. Doesn't feel like a win. It's not, Harold nodded. It's a start. Start of what? Harold sipped his tea. Of being more than just the boy in the hoodie, of showing the world what's underneath it. That night, Elijah opened his laptop again. Typed 3 words. Behind the hood. He hit save, smiled, and for the first time in a long time, he felt seen. Some lessons are learned, others are lived. Elijah Brooks lived it, and from the wreckage of assumption and silence, he built something louder than a verdict, a voice. It started with a single post. A student at Central Hill Academy uploaded Elijah's speech, uncut, unedited, filmed on a shaky phone from the 3rd row. By the end of the day, it had 300,000 views. By the end of the week, over 4 million. Local news picked it up first. High school student delivers powerful speech on bias and identity. Then came the think pieces, the podcast interviews, the invitations. Howard University called. So did Morehouse. And a high school in Chicago asked if Elijah would do a Zoom talk with their student body. You made us feel brave, one student wrote. I didn't know I could say it out loud. But Elijah didn't care about the headlines. He cared about the hallway. The one at school that used to feel like a tunnel narrowing in on him now felt just a little wider. He noticed it in the way teachers corrected themselves mid-sentence. When students all students, in the way students started asking harder questions in class, in the way the faculty started adding new books to the curriculum, Baldwin, Coates, even a few young black poets from Seattle, and in the way Maya, Darius, and 2 other students launched a new student group, HOOD, Honoring Our Own Dignity. They met every Thursday in room 114. No agenda, no PowerPoint slides, just conversation. They talked about perception, about code switching, about what it feels like to be labeled before you speak. They invited students of all backgrounds. And what surprised Elijah most? People came, not because they were forced, but because they were ready. One day, Miss Alvarez, the counselor who'd supported Elijah from the beginning, pulled him aside. Did you hear what the district's doing? He shook his head. Mandatory anti-bias training for all teachers and staff. They're even reviewing their disciplinary policy with outside consultants. Elijah blinked. Because of me? She smiled. Because of the mirror you held up. It wasn't perfect. Some students still looked through him instead of at him. Some parents still whispered. But Elijah had stopped trying to earn comfort. He was building truth instead. Outside of school, the impact spread wider. A journalist wrote a feature story called The Boy in the Hoodie Who Made a City Listen. Local libraries started hosting stories from the silence nights. inviting youth to share moments when they felt misjudged. One evening, a white mother from the suburbs stood up and said, "My son wears hoodies too, but I've never once worried he'd be mistaken for a threat. That's privilege. I didn't see it until Elijah." And then came the national feature, CBS Sunday Morning. A quiet, dignified 12-minute segment called Behind the Hood. They filmed Elijah on his porch, with Harold, with Simone, and even walking beside Marcus through the school hallway. Not as a victim, as a young man with a voice. And as the credits rolled, they used Elijah's closing line from the school speech. "I wear this hoodie not to disappear, but to be seen." After it aired, letters flooded in, handwritten ones, emails, drawings from middle schoolers. One came from a woman in Atlanta. "My son is 8. He saw your story and asked why people were scared of a hoodie. I didn't have a good answer, but now I have your words." Another came from a retired police officer in Oregon. "I wish I'd heard someone like you when I was 25. It might have changed the way I looked at people." But not all responses were soft. There were still trolls, still online pushback, still people who called it race baiting or overblown. And Elijah, he didn't reply to them. He didn't repost. He didn't rant. He just kept going. He started writing essays, reflections, spoken word pieces. He turned Behind the Hood into a blog, then a podcast, then a video series where he interviewed other teens who'd experienced similar moments of erasure. It grew, not fast, not viral, but steady, like a ripple across the still water, quiet but impossible to stop. One evening, as the city buzzed outside, Elijah sat with Marcus on the porch. Same 2 chairs, same tea, same soft hum of traffic in the distance. "You remember what you said to me in the meeting?" Elijah asked. "I said a lot. You said I shouldn't let them write my story." Marcus smiled. "Looks like you took that seriously." Elijah looked out at the street, the place where, not long ago, he felt small. Now it felt open, not perfect, but possible. "Dad," Elijah said quietly, "you ever get tired?" Marcus didn't answer right away. "All the time," he finally said. "But I've learned something." "What's that?" "You don't have to shout to be heard. You just have to speak with something they can't ignore." Elijah nodded. "Truth?" Marcus raised his cup. "And presence." They sat in silence after that. No performance, no audience. Just a father and son, both in hoodies, no longer hiding. Behind every label is a life. Behind every hoodie is a heartbeat. And behind every silence is a story waiting to be told. Elijah Brooks didn't ask to be the story, but now he owns it. And maybe, just maybe, his voice is the start of someone else's courage. A hoodie became a headline became a movement, a boy became a voice, and a voice became a ripple across a nation still learning how to listen. If this story moved you, if you found yourself seeing Elijah not just as a character, but as someone you know, someone you could be, then don't let it end here. Because this isn't just about one boy and one hoodie on one rainy afternoon. It's about all the moments we choose to stay silent. All the times we look, but don't really see. It's about how fast fear can travel and how much courage it takes to slow it down. So here's what you can do. Speak up when someone tells the story wrong. Lean in when bias tries to speak on your behalf. And listen, really listen, when someone trusted with silence finally decides to speak. Then share this story with a friend, a teacher, a neighbor. Not just to raise awareness, but to raise accountability. Because behind every hoodie, every label, every misunderstanding, there's a human being with a voice. And the next time you see one, don't look away. Don't scroll past. Stay and see them fully. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like Elijah's. Stories that remind us what justice sounds like. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next voice waiting to be heard. And if you've lived a story like this, share it. The world needs your voice.